Hi, I'm Jenny. In this video, I have a channeled message for February of 2022 where we are encouraged to focus on joy. I just want to begin by saying that whenever you're watching this video, the message will be good for you. So if you're not watching it in February, that's okay. When I read the channeled message, I think it makes sense to pop on some headphones and close your eyes and just take in the words, because maybe some other words or visualizations will come up for you that'll make it more of a deeper meaning for you personally. So I'll go ahead and I'll read the message, then I'll discuss what my take is on it, and then I'll do a card reading. I think cards give us a nice visual to kind of focus on with the words of the meaning. So I like to do both. So I always begin by asking what it is I need to share. And I was told, you need to share joy. Joy is elusive for many. It is not something that is honored or considered sacred in modern society. It is something that is considered frivolous, or something to put off, or something that can wait. And I saw a lot of people with, like an unhappy expression on their face, kind of going through life from one thing to the next. But the truth is that when people sacrifice joy for chores, to-do lists, and other things that grab their attention, that they feel are necessary or give them structure or give them purpose, they sacrifice pleasure and joyful activities for these structured, society-accepted, constrained activities that they don't derive joy from. They become less happy. And this really echoes last month's message for January about waking up to society and cultural constraints and conditioning. And so again, they're talking about how it's somehow not socially acceptable to focus on your joy. It says they become less and less happy, less and less full of light and love, less and less joyful. Joy is really the closest you can get to God, so the source, the universe. Joy is the key that unlocks the door to enlightenment. And I saw like a really pretty key with joy engraved on it, and like a rounded door that's kind of glowing, and someone putting the key in. Joy is the key that unlocks the door to enlightenment, to absolute rapture. It unlocks that door. But so many people don't find joy in their day-to-day. They don't even consider it a priority or necessary to their existence. It seems extraneous or frivolous, but joy is so necessary for balanced life. Somewhere along the line, when people evolved, they took on these masculine traits of doing or working, not creating or listening. And this imbalance has gone so far as to leave joy behind. And so just to explain, when we talk about masculine and feminine energy, we're not talking about men and women or any gender or sex or anything. We're really talking about the energy. There's masculine energy and feminine energy in every person. And the goal is for all of us to have that in balance. And in our society, when people talk about patriarchy and all of that, what they're really pointing out is that our society is very masculine. And we really honor men over women in most, of these modern societies and cultures. And that's become an imbalance. And that started a couple thousand years ago. And, and it really has changed the course of how we treat the earth and each other and things like that. And this balance has not gone so far as to leave joy behind. If one isn't working or being productive or making money or doing something to better themselves, it's considered a worthless activity. But your ancestors found sacred joy. They reveled in berries that were ripe, beautiful fires, watching stars, being with their families, looking at clouds, simple pleasures that are looked down upon, are looked at as only for children. So I saw ancestors, dancing around a fire, holding hands, collecting berries out in the forest, and relishing the taste, just these simple pleasures that if many of us were to say, that's what I'm going to go do today, other people may think, why? What are you doing? Why would you go and do that? Why would you just go and sit and stare at a fire, stare at the clouds? And that's where they're talking about these social kind of constraints. Think back to when you were a child and you daydreamed. When you laid on your back and looked at the stars or clouds, think about when the taste of something was new to you or fresh. Think about the first time you tasted something wonderful like ripe berries or a piece of chocolate. Joy needs to be invited into your life. You need to do as Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss. What gives you bliss? What lights you up? Because when you get lit up, you can leave that legacy of light for others. It is not selfish to find joy and seek pleasure. Instead, it makes you whole. It makes you complete. It makes you happy. And that happiness lights up somebody else. And it continues. Your joy makes room for other people's joy. It gives them permission to find joy. It is contagious. I wanted to start by saying that it's funny because these are my guides, right? So they reference things that I know. And so maybe not everyone's familiar with Joseph Campbell. And so Joseph Campbell, he was like a bodhisattva. He was an amazing human being who studied all these different religions and spiritual ways of being and honored them and didn't look down on them in a time when, white people would call some other culture a savage culture. He didn't do that. He was really honored these sacred traditions. And what he noticed is that so many of these myths and stories were similar, and that we really have him to thank for the idea of like recognizing the hero's journey, that we each have this journey that we spiral back basically into ourselves. So many stories, popular stories in popular culture, it's like there's a person, a hero, that goes on this long journey just to realize that what they needed all along was at home with them, back where they were, or metaphorically inside of them. Dorothy had the slippers the whole time, that kind of an idea. And that's the hero's journey, and that we all have basically what we need within us, within our wisdom and our own hearts, to have this fulfilled life, this idea of following your bliss. And so he basically said that if you just find out what makes you joyful, gives you bliss. So bliss is like beyond joy. It's like that blissed out, wow, this euphoric feeling. If you follow the things that light you up like that, you will lead a fulfilled life. You will follow your hero's journey. And so it's interesting that was brought up. I wanted to take a moment to kind of talk about January's message. January's message was all about opening our eyes and seeing more clearly, what kind of constraints have been put on us by other people, and shedding those, and really letting ourselves be open to what we want and who we are, and finding our own voice. And I think that's a perfect transition. We have to recognize what is making us unhappy and recognize all this stuff that's been put on us that we just do because everybody else does it, or that's the way my parents did that, or whatever. We really start questioning. We do that, and then that makes our way for joy, because in our society, like I talked about in the last message, a truly happy person is often looked at as crazy. Like, why are you so happy? Like, it's you don't see people walking around like smiles on their faces and standing up straight and dancing or being happy. If someone were to do that, someone might question that person's mental stability, which is sad, right? And so this message is all about joy and how we as a culture, as a people, just put it off. And I know it's interesting because I've been channeling now for a few years, and so many of the message I get from myself is about joy. Find joy. Seek out joy. Like, open yourself to joy. And it's like very loud and clear all the time. And I will say that in January, that was tested. Our whole family, we really were sick in December and January. You can hear it in my voice still. And, how do you find joy in illness? And how do you find joy in these things? And it's challenging. I'm not going to say it's not to find the joy in the day-to-day. I realize a lot of my joy is derived by, I'm a Taurus, and so a lot of my joy is derived by my senses. I light a special candle, or I have a certain incense that I like to smell. I love the smell of sage, only if it's ethically grown, right? I love to cook for my family. I love to bake for my family. I love dark chocolate. Like there's these things that I really enjoy. And I lost my sense of taste and smell, and it's still not fully back. And so I was really like amazed by how like the little things I'm grateful for and the little things I look forward to and the joy I give myself has to do a lot with those senses. And so it really forced me to like think about other things, like what else can bring you joy? And of course, like nature and music and family, being with family, doing something artistic. And so what we're really being challenged to do in February is not putting off our joy, because some people are so far into this working and being productive aspect that they may not even know what brings them joy. And if you're one of those people, don't feel ashamed or embarrassed, but this is an opportunity for you to start thinking about, what does make me feel joyful? Like what gives me a giddy feeling or a happy feeling? And if you're having a struggle, like you don't even know what brings you joy, think back to childhood and free moments where you didn't have school or whatever. And what were you doing? Were you like sitting in a tree? Were you reading Nancy Drew novels? Were you coloring? Like, were you playing with action figures? Like what was bringing you joy? And then how do you apply that to being a grown-up, And you may even end up doing something this month for inner child healing. Like maybe you always wanted this certain action figure and you never got it, and you have the funds and you're going to get it on eBay and you're going to see it and you're going to love it and it's going to bring you joy. Like those things that we just put off, right? That's ridiculous. Why are you doing that? Because it makes me happy. How many times do you have that as an answer? If someone asks you like, well, why do you do whatever you're doing? How many times is your answer because it makes me happy? It's usually not. It's like, well, it looks good on a resume, or, it'll be good from this kind of thing or this kind of thing, or it'll be good to save this money for the future, whatever. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do those things, right? But it's about balance. So in your day, it can't be all work. You can't just go from chore to chore to chore, because, your inbox is never empty. There will always be things for you to do. There will always be things people want from you, and there will always be things for you to do. And if you just keep putting it off and putting it off, the joyful things like, I'll, you got like maybe, I got an Avatar coloring book for Christmas because I love the last Airbender Avatar, not the movie, so the show. And I love Uncle Iroh, right? I have like this deep love. Like if there's a real Uncle Iroh out there, I'm hoping he finds me. Like I would love to have Uncle Iroh as a friend. We can drink tea together. But I got that coloring book, right? And so many of us will just kind of be like, oh, that's a really sweet idea. I'll get to it a couple of weeks from now. That's just kind of a normal adult life, right? That's the hashtag adulting that everyone feels sad about. But when you think about it in your day, you have time, like right before bed or maybe right when you wake up, or, instead of being on your phone, you have time to read that book you've been wanting to read, or do a little bit of needlepoint or crocheting or whatever it is that you are like, this makes me feel happy. And it's really we're being asked not to put off the happiness, and then we're also being asked to find what brings us happy. And then the last part we're being asked to is not to be ashamed of what brings you joy. There's a lot of shaming in our Western society, in my culture, in the United States. There's a lot of shaming for doing what makes you happy, and it's a fine line, because it can go to the point where it's self-centered and selfish, and people like abandon their loved ones to follow this kind of thing that lights them up, makes them happy. I'm not saying to do that. That's extreme, right? I'm saying to find the balance. So instead of being ashamed that what did you do after work? I colored. Instead of being ashamed to say that, or you make up something else like, oh, I ran some errands. You don't have to be ashamed. When we start saying the things that bring us joy, and then we show people we're doing them, or we tell people we're doing them, we give them the encouragement, like it says in here, the permission, the spark to do that too. Because and if you have children, you're showing them that, what are we doing right now? I'm going to color. You want to color with me? Or I'm going to paint. You want to paint with me? you're showing them that you are putting yourself and your joy first, which many of us did not grow up with that. We grew up with like our parents being super busy all the time and doing chores, or or maybe when they were doing what they thought was joyful, it neglected us, right? Like drinking or doing drugs or partying or whatever. It was it was an imbalance. And so many of us grow up with like, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to put my own happiness and be selfish, or, I don't want to be like my parents who were constantly busy and never made room for joy. Like, we're trying to find that balance. And so that's what this is talking about. So I'm going to ask you one more time, what are some things that light you up? And if you don't know, that's okay. Start trying some things. Your friend does this as a hobby, give it a try. They teach this at a local class you can have time for, try it. So we're being asked in February to decide what it is that even makes us happy, because many of us don't know, and that's okay. And then making room for it, and then not being ashamed of it, sharing about it, because that's the hardest step. That's the hardest step, is to be vulnerable. It feels vulnerable to say that, like, I just do this because it makes me happy. Like, it feels like shameful for a lot of us. And so those are your kind of 3 steps for February. And I'm excited. I'm excited to see if you can, I would love for people to share with me their insights and what they end up doing, at the end of this month. If you come back here on this video and just comment, like, I found joy in these 3 things. And that would make me happy, because that would really leave that legacy of light that we talked about last month. Stick around and I will do a card reading. Okay, so what are we looking at, or what do we need to know for February of 2022? Okay. The Stag, pride and leadership. So I think this really talks about that idea of being a leader when it comes to your own happiness and joy. I've talked about this before. I think it was in December when I said no one can make you feel joy. Like, no one can make you happy, only you can. And so it really talks about you taking pride in your own self and your own joy, and stepping out and being a leader, like deciding to lead and find that joy. And then we also have this masculine energy, which is to show that, masculine energy is not negative. It's getting a really negative rap in society because of toxic masculinity and the patriarchy, and just people are tired of the imbalance. But it's the masculine energy is still good. It's the doing energy. We need both, right? And that's kind of what we're talking about. The Cat, independence and healthy boundaries. I knew this card would come up because when I did a card reading for myself for the year, this was my card for February from this deck. So I was like, it's going to come up, I'm sure. And so, yes, so this is a month for, again, there's like leadership and independence go together. This is a month for you to have the independence and have the healthy boundaries, because really the only way you make space for joy is through healthy boundaries, right? When we think about a cat does whatever they want, like without care, right? If they want to lay in the sunshine, they're gonna lay in the sunshine. If they want to knock your water glass over, they're gonna do that. They lead a very joyful life. They follow their bliss, they chase the bird, the mouse, or they sleep for 18 hours. Like, they're doing whatever their body wants whenever they want. And so we can definitely take some encouragement from a cat, and we want to have those boundaries. Like, no, I don't want to work overtime. I don't need the money. Or no, I don't want to go on this thing because that doesn't bring me joy. Like, we have to start having boundaries in order for us to make room for joy. We got the Lady of the Lake, absolute truth, courage, self-respect, and responsibility. We're getting a lot about courage and independence and leadership. And so, it's your responsibility to bring yourself joy, and it's the absolute truth, right? We learned in the message that it's the key to enlightenment, the key to like being close to God is finding your joy. But I'm also seeing, the sword makes me really think it's like this is a month where we're really cutting through a bunch of misinformation. We're cutting away, more so than even in January when we talked about like lifting a veil. So this is more intense. It's like we're cutting away the cords of things holding us back from our joy. And then being in the water too, that's emotions, right? So we're cutting things back and we're making room for ourselves, for our emotions, to put ourselves forward. So I love that. And communication, right? Communication in all levels. I think this is what this is talking about. So communicating those healthy boundaries, communicating to others, that you are doing what makes you happy, and that's enough. Like that's enough of a reason to do something. We don't need 5 other reasons that look good on a resume for why we're doing it. We're doing it because it makes us happy. And then having this open communication, that is something that's hard sometimes. It's hard to explain that we're going to put ourselves first for a moment to other people. It takes courage, and that's that communication. I'm going to pull one more. Focus. All right, so we're going to focus on joy. That's our focus. We're going to walk that path to enlightenment, and the way to do that is by following our bliss, right? This really makes me think of my Joseph Campbell reference of the hero's journey, right? So we're going to set out on that journey, and we're going to focus with, there's an arrow there, and we're going to lead ourselves to joy. I hope these cards resonate with you as well as the channeled message. If this is good and you enjoyed it, I would love a like and I would love a subscribe.